You're a Mark's man now. That's how it works.
You know, you'd be single for a certain amount of time and it's just, it messes with your mind. You
I
need a
think
bit of
that's
companionship. You can be a slave to your own solitude. That's the problem. You know, I've
yeah,
witnessed that.
definitely.
I've witnessed that
Yeah.
myself in life where, I don't know, I can't even explain it. You do become cynical, don't you? You start to think like the whole world is against you.
Yeah.
You know, there's amount of times, I mean, I used to do this thing where I'd save up a bunch of money and I'd go off to France. That was the country I chose because I wanted to speak that language. And anytime I felt like life wasn't really going anywhere or I didn't feel like I could fit in, maybe a relationship had just ended, I'd be like, right, I'm going to grab my things, take my money, go to France. And I've done this 3 times and I don't regret it. I don't regret it, but I look back at the motivation. And I always say this thing, you know, it's all well and good going someplace else to start fresh, but the first thing you're greeted by once you get to that airport on the other side is your baggage.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
You can't get away from the baggage. You know, if we're going to go deep, man, I'll tell you a story. I haven't told this before on the podcast. So back in 2015, beginning of 2015, I was just out of a relationship and it was difficult because she'd moved on quite quickly and I hadn't. And I was like, wow, you know, kind of having this feeling of like, oh, I wasn't good enough because the guy she was with, suddenly she was putting out there how much happier she was. And I couldn't accept that. So I thought, right, I'm going to make something of myself. I'm going to go to France again. Right. So I started applying for jobs at holiday parks. I was a qualified lifeguard. And I thought, right, I'm going to do this. And eventually I succeeded. Got myself to France at a place called Cibleu, which is like European haven. And when I got there, I knew my head was messed up, but I was in denial, absolute denial. But there comes a point where you're confronted by the truth and you can't turn away from it.
Mm.
And I just broke. Like I broke harder than I've ever broken my whole life. Just crying, man, like for 3 hours straight. I was a fucking mess because my ego had
Because you're on your own.
Because I'm on my own. I'm in this mobile home with no TV and very little internet. And suddenly I realized, oh shit, I'm not okay. I should have stayed at home where my family was. I should have opened up to them because I was in this state of denial. I just kept saying, I'm going to be okay because my ego had convinced me that I was going to go to France and be at this holiday park surrounded by these French, Italian, English people that were on the same wavelength of me and everything was just going to work out brilliantly. That's what my ego had convinced me of. And when I get there, suddenly I realize it's very empty and everybody sort of sticks with themselves. And I'm this sort of outcast, just trying to get along with it. And that was, it was business. Like the mentality over there was work, 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 work. There was very little downtime. And I'm sat in this mobile home and it just hit me because I thought, oh, wow, this time last year, me and this girl had moved in together and the relationship was growing. And now here I am, bang, on my own. And it was like, I broke because that's what the ego does. The ego's a strange thing, isn't it?
For sure.
Where you just be in this delusional mindset and then it just bang hits you. And I cried, but I'm glad I did. It was very healing because from that point onwards, the next day was my 23rd birthday. And it's like, right, okay, now the healing begins. And it was a long, long process. It was a good 2 years before I finally, you know, started making real progress on my mind, on myself, and starting to understand, oh yeah, this is my home, where I live, my family, they're my home. I don't need to keep running away. You know, I can stay here and, you know, because it's like that John Candy quote in Cool Runnings. If you can't be one without it, you'll never be one with it.
Cool. There you go.
And anyway, that was my fucking little sharing moment there.
You'll feel more confidence for moving away. Thanks, Dan.
I've got no. Obviously, don't let that dissuade you in any way because one, you're only moving 200 miles.
I'm joking.
Oh, sorry, dude. But don't let that dissuade you because yeah.
No, nothing dissuade me unless I'll not going to say what I was going to say, but yeah.
The human's journey is cyclical. You never stop growing. You're going to have your triumphs. You're going to have your downfalls and then the triumphs again. And it is just a constant process throughout your life. And you learn things about it throughout your failures, throughout your low points, you learn more about yourself. Sometimes it comes across a bit nihilistic what I'm going to say, but sometimes when you hit rock bottom, you can take a reassurance in knowing that you can't go any lower.
Well, I don't know. I've got an argument for that. I remember living in those two lesbians' house on the couch, thinking, oh, I can't get any lower. It's funny now, but I thought, yeah, I can't get any fucking lower than this. 2 years later, I'm fucking lower than that. It was rough. So it can happen, but like, yeah, I know what you mean. It helped me get through the lower times more.
Yeah. There's no limit to how low things can get. You know, you could be bankrupt, you could be on your ass, divorced, your kids hate you and all that, and then you think, oh, I can't get any lower than this, and then fucking you lose a leg. You know, and so there is always lower. That's what I'm trying to say. You can always get lower.
Both will be even lower.
You know what I mean? Yes, it's always going to get lower. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you're filled with such despair, the way I was in that mobile home, when the reality hit me like a brick wall, it was like there was that little voice in my head that said, "This is rock bottom. It doesn't get any lower than this." Technically, from a technical point, at that moment, and it was like, okay, now I can start healing. Now I can start putting the pieces back together again. Now I can start being honest with myself. It's like, okay, I was letting my ego get the better of me. I was trying to showboat to this other person and say, look at me, I'm better off without you. And it's like, no. I need to acknowledge. It's like that whole Carl Jung thing in the book, A Modern Man's Search for Meaning. He says, first there's the confession, then there's the explanation, followed by the education, and finally the transformation. And that's what I had to go through. But again, it's cyclical, because there's new obstacles as we grow in life. If we have ambitions, if we have goals, we're going to pursue them if we're motivated. But there are always going to be low points, but low points from a higher perspective, because you've reached that higher plane. But then that no longer becomes the, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, I'm trying to think of an example. But say, for example, let's use YouTube, for example, right? We hit 200 views on a video and it's like, wow, that's amazing. But then that then becomes the standard, not the anomaly. Yeah. The anomaly has become the standard, and it has to be 200 from now on. And then you get to 300. Now that becomes the standard. So if you drop down to 250, you're like, oh shit, we're doing really, really badly. Well, not really, because a month ago, 200 was amazing. And now I'm crying about 250. You know what I mean? That makes sense. Maybe I was a bit convoluted, but.
No, I understand. You always go, there's another thing I wanted to discuss was kind of extremes. So like that pendulum that you always go between, like for example, smoking is a really good one. Quitting smoking, starting smoking, quitting smoking, starting smoking, and everyone's always like, where's the middle ground? Like, what, you know, if neither are good, to always be smoking or never be smoking, like if neither of them you want, then where's the middle ground? I think the way that I was explaining it before is you kind of have to then stop worrying about that and move to a higher purpose. So like, how can that process make my life better? And I think what you were explaining earlier about having a hiatus and then coming back to it and using it for what it's kind of for, and then going back, I think that's absolutely amazing. But the goal is always in the gray, to kind of like, if you go to any extreme on anything, you're probably not quite in the right area. That's just from my experience.
Yeah, it's always about balance. I mean, something as basic as water, without it we die, but too much of it, you can drown. If you drink too much water, you drown.
For sure. There you go. That's a good example.
All about balance. All about balance. And there's no real consistency when it comes to balance. It really depends on the circumstances at the time, what works for you, because it's constantly shifting. It's like our life is almost like a Rubik's Cube that's constantly changing size, and we're just trying to keep up with it. And if you fret, if you're nervous, if you're constantly, you know what I mean, if you've got this emotion, I've seen people in my life, and I've been that person myself, where you're constantly fretting and worrying, and you lose sight of the little things.
That's me.
But that's part of the learning, to stop and acknowledge and look at yourself and think, oh, I get it now. Just stay grounded and take it a day at a time. Just little day, because you might look back from 6 months ago and think, oh fuck, I've done really, really well. I was too blind to even realize it. We've made jokes about this in the past, where we're saying, one day you'll just be an old person shitting in a bed, wishing you hadn't worried about that outfit from that night out 50 years ago, because it wasn't about that night out. It wasn't about the outfit. It was about the experience.
Yeah.
exactly.
Totally. But then I think it's also an extreme to take things one day at a time. So to take it, when people talk about meditation and they talk about being present and staying present and all that stuff, I think it's great. I think it's brilliant. But again, it's an extreme. If you're constantly living in the present moment, I've had girlfriends before that are extremely present, but they don't have then something else that they're kind of working towards. I've been guilty of it before as well, like for a long time, especially whilst I was living in Weymouth. It was like I would get my paycheck and I would buy food, and then I would eat the food, and then I'd go to work. And that cycle continued, and I'd be at ground zero I was paid weekly, every single week. You're like, shit, I really need this paycheck. But then as soon as you take it to a long-term goal, everyone's like, yeah, but you could get run over by a bus tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, but I might not. And if I'm not, then what do I want? And I don't know.
Yeah, you're more likely to get run over by a car because that bus is only every 12 minutes. Statistically.
Not if you're standing outside the bus carriage thing where they fix up all the buses.
You're more likely to get hit by a bus if you're a bus driver because they're around buses all the time. It's like, easy on Barry. You can get hit by a bus tomorrow. You fucking work at the depot, for fuck's sake.
That's it, the depot, yeah. Go hang around the bus depot. You're bound to get hit by a bus.
Calm down, Barry. Calm down. You can get hit by a bus tomorrow. You're a mechanic, for fuck's sake.
Plus, buses go pretty slow. Actually, no, not when they're on the highway.
Yeah, but then there's mass. You've got to throw mass into the equation.
Is more mass safer to get hit by than less mass?
No, more mass is bad.
Well, I don't know why I said that out loud, but yeah. Obviously it is.
The moral of the story is
no, but if like I
think if I was hit by a bus, that's like a wall. Yeah, if you're hit by a car, that's taking your feet out and you're going over the other stuff.
That's what I'm thinking. You can, if you get hit by a certain speed, let's just say, if it's buses going fast, it's gonna fucking splatter you. But a certain speed, you can like hang on. But I've seen it in movies.
Velocity is always an issue as well. I mean, let's look at trains, for example. I mean, I saw a video a long time ago of a bird. I mean, it must have been a train spotter that caught this footage. A pigeon was flying and the train was just coming. And when it hit that bird, it just evaporated. It was just gone. And I'm like, wow.
You ever seen those videos where like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like loads of cars and then a car would just appear from nowhere that wasn't there before. Is that camera tricky or is that just... how to explain it? Like,
well, is this related to like a driving awareness where it's trying to reveal to you the blind spots, like, or what's
it's like a supernatural thing. The car is real, and then there's like a line of cars. The cars will pull off, and then a car that you didn't see will just come from nowhere and just turn right. I'd have to show you a video. I can't really explain it very well, but
it's funny, isn't it? Like that whole conceptual thing. You know, the way we perceive this world is because, you know, everything goes through the eyes, right? And it goes through the optic nerve, and the brain then has to decipher what that image is, that information that's coming through our eyes. The brain decides, oh, this is what you're experiencing. This is your reality. So we are forever at the mercy of what the brain can perceive.
So you have the belief that if you can't see it, it doesn't exist?
I don't know, because it
and I don't mean like gases and neutrons and tiny things you can't see that are obviously there. I just mean like, example, UFOs. If you've never seen them, how do you know they exist? Ghosts, similar. I know that's all supernatural shit, but like...
It goes back to that quote, doesn't it? If a tree falls down in the woods and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? You know, it's a food for thought in the sense that, you know, does it make a sound because you're there to hear it?
Yeah, but every time I've heard that, every time I've thought in my head, I think if a video is on mute, did it make a sound? Obviously, it made a sound. You're just not there to hear it, or you've pressed the button to. You know what I mean? Or is that?
It's like, well, again, you know, the color green. Your headphones are green, but my green could be your red. There's no way to prove or disprove it. I mean, that's some real existential shit right there.
My favorite one is when mushrooms like take you outside of your perception, so you're able to see things a little bit for like what they are rather than how you feel about them. If you do a lot, you kind of the reality that I had was that imagine you've only got five senses, yeah? Imagine they'll shut off sort of one by one and then switch back on again. But if you didn't have those five senses, then what is your perception? What goes on? Like what are you? Do you know what I mean?
That's
You're
fucking
saying that everything,
insane. I like that.
Yeah, I know. My brain just blew up there. For I think I don't know. Would just be fucking an A4 sheet of paper.
that's what I'm saying. Like, unless someone's keeping you alive, obviously, like someone would actually have to keep you alive at that point because you can't taste or touch, so you wouldn't be able to eat. But
That's
like,
a weird one, but yeah, because again, we're at the mercy of the way our brain deciphers the information of our
100%.
external reality. You know, there's this whole external reality going on, but there's 7.9 billion human beings on the planet, and we're all in accordance of we're all mutually agreeing in some shape or form. This is the reality that we live within.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there doesn't seem to be any issue. I mean, when it comes to any sort of abstract discussion or anything that's sort of theoretical, that's when you're going to have a difference in opinion. But when it comes to the sort of what you call quote unquote objective truth, we're all sort of in agreeing. We agree with that.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
there's five. We've got five objective senses, like I said, and what if there is a sixth that we're just not aware of?
yeah, because you know we have the vision. Here's an interesting one for you, right? So we have the visible spectrum.
There you go.
You know, but then it goes beyond that. We're talking X-rays, gamma rays, ultraviolet light, things that we can't see. So back in the day, this might have been in the 1800s, when people had eye surgery, they would actually have the filters removed from their eyes so they could see ultraviolet light. The procedure is done differently now. For example, eagles, they can see ultraviolet light. They can see the piss of their prey. And they can see it from extreme heights, and they swoop in there and grab the little bastard. So there was an artist, I can't remember his name, but he had this eye surgery done in the 1900s, and he did a painting, and he did it of his back garden, and he did it with one eye, his good eye, and that painting was like autumn colors, very orange, and you know, but the other eye was ultraviolet, purple, violet colors. If you can find this painting, it is beautiful. And I'm thinking, wow, that's always there. We just don't see it, because if we didn't have filters in our eyes, we'd be blind by the time we're 30. Whereas an eagle probably only lives for about, I don't know, 10, 15 years. So they don't need filters in their eyes. Whereas we live, you know, on average 76 years in this country. That's well, it might be more than that now. But let's just say we live for 80 years. You know, we need those filters to protect
So
our
you're
eyes.
talking like it would just burn out we just UV out our own retinas, basically.
Yeah, the ultraviolet light would just destroy our eyes over a long period of time.
Mad.
And that, again, that's part of the spectrum that we don't see, but it's still there. I mean, just because you deny it doesn't mean it's not there. Again, that goes into that whole, what is the definition of objective truth? Is there an objective truth? Is there a divine truth? You know, religious people will talk about that. They'll say, you know, God, for example, if Christians will talk about God, they'll say the divine truth, the 10 commandments. Every religion has its own doctrine, things that they abide by, things that they say, these are the objective truths of this reality.
Every religion's God loved pyramids.
Yeah, what is up with that?
You tell me.
I don't know. Something up with it. So it's like when someone says who believes in the flat earth theory. Now, I don't scoff at them. I mean, I'm not into that theory. I'm into the simulation theory, which we'll get into in a second. But when people talk about flat earth, I always use that line from the film K-Pax, or the book K-Pax with Kevin Spacey, where it says, why is a soap bubble round? And the psychiatrist says, why is a soap bubble round? And Pro, played by Kevin Spacey in the movie, says, because it is the most energy efficient configuration. So, you know, I believe in the simulation hypothesis, but I do not believe the earth is flat, because it'd just be more practical for it to be a sphere.
I agree.
Yeah, 100%. There's no point in even talking about flat earth theory. It just drives me insane, man. Because on one side of it, I can see like some of their arguments a tiny bit, but then no. Just no.
It stems from, you know, people who are on board with the theory for the most part are very cynical of authority, very cynical of those in the arbiters of truth, let's say, you know, the scientists, the experts, and they say, you know what, they've been lying about this, and this, and this, which they have been. But it comes to the point where you become so jaded and so cynical that you think, you know what, I don't know what the fuck to believe anymore. And the flat earth just suddenly makes sense now.
Yeah, that mate. I think that's where it stepped. Because back when I was living with those lesbians, I used to watch a lot of fucking shit like that on YouTube before like the apocalypse and all that shit. You get a lot of theory videos. Because if you type in conspiracy theory now on YouTube, it's like debunking videos and stuff now. Like they've really fucking cracked down on it. But I went down a rabbit hole back then of like the flat earth theory. Now I never openly admitted to being like a flat earther, but like I used to watch a lot of videos and be like, Then like one time it just hit me like, that's fucking dumb, man. Like it is literally the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard.
Why do you think?
Man.
I have a question for you, Sean. Why do you think that people go for it? Why? And same with religion, because there's obviously not, from my perspective and my opinion, there's obviously not a dude with a beard in the sky hidden behind the clouds. So why do you think people go down that rabbit hole of believing in stuff that is, from a childish perspective, is quite obviously not true?
I think I can only speak from my, like when I was doing it and shit. I mean, I still like a lot, like a cheeky theory here and there, but it's gotta make sense. Do you know what I mean? But I think a lot of people do it because it's sexy, it's appealing, in it. It's like, oh, that sounds fucking good. Let's fucking go down the rabbit hole on this one, and they just block out all the actual evidence. They don't see that. Yeah. They just see the appetizing theory. It's like, oh, give me more. And they just go down the rabbit hole. That's my theory anyway. And sometimes it can be like you're having a shitty time in life and it's just like, again, it's sexy and appealing. You just want to watch those sorts of things that take you out of reality, and you don't want to question the actual evidence. You just want to watch the theory and get into that. And then when you start telling people about it, they're like, yeah, but this happened. And then you get pissed off because you're like, damn, I watched fucking 10 hours of footage and it's fucking fake.
And I think it's within it's a sort of inherent nature for us to try and rationalize the irrational. You know, again, you know, those images going through our eye and through our optic nerve to our brain to decipher the image of the reality. We try and do that with everything. We're trying to understand and decipher this reality. And some things are more appealing than others because it's like, oh, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's easier to settle for the less than it is for the more. You know,
and I think 2020 onwards, the conspiracy theory people have changed. It's more now, it's more like against the government now than it just being an appealing theory.
An anti-authoritarian movement. Because, you know, again, when it comes to the arbiters of truth, let's give what's been happening for the last 18 months as an example. You know, someone might say something that's alternative to what's accepted, and they will be banned or they'll be censored or there'll be a banner saying this is false information. And you click on that banner, that will take you to an NHS website, or it will take you to a fact checker or whatever these websites are called. Yeah. And you go onto these and they'll give you a sort of bullet point explanation of why that's false information. But then you wonder where they're getting that information from. And maybe they'll give references, but this is a collection of human beings that we accept as experts to give us the most informed and truthful statistics or facts.
Is that
but they are at the mercy of their own. We are at the mercy of. It's hard to explain what I'm trying to say, but you know, they're just as flawed as anyone else.
Yeah.
Because again, what is the objective truth? And there's always going to be deception behind it because of motivation, because of that's who we are. We are a species that just fuck others over. But we can hide behind being an expert. It's like that Milgram experiment in 1962. Most people went along with the test despite their own morals because they were in the presence of someone who wore the white lab coat. They were the symbol of authority and trust. And
I think it's like a scare tactic, isn't it? Because take the vaccine, for example. If you don't get it or you talk about not getting it, you're kind of like a piece of shit, aren't you?
You fall into two camps. And it's a lot more nuanced than that. It's either for it or against it, but it's a lot more complicated than that. But I don't know. I don't want to go down this route because it's an ongoing thing, you know, and I'm a big believer that the truth reveals itself sooner or later. So I'm just sort of standing by, and then it becomes easier to make decisions as time goes on because It's like anything. CIA documents get declassified after 30 years, and it's like, no, that this was what actually happened. You're like, oh, you motherfuckers.
I think that's bullshit as well. Because if you see, remember they were going to like release UFO footage. What are they called now? They're not UFOs anymore. What are they? What do they?
UFO is defined as an unidentifiable flying object, right?
Yeah, no, but there's a new acronym for it now. They've changed it from UFO to something else. It's going to do my nothing. UPOs. I don't know. They've changed the name, but what the fuck was I going to say? I totally fucked myself over here.
UPS. No, joking.
Yeah.
Just before we move away from that, like conspiracy theories and religion, just really quickly, I wanted to just touch on, you know what I said to you, Sean, earlier about why do you think people do it?
Mhm.
I think my opinion is that it's a community thing, which is similar, so I suppose, to what you were saying before. But like, everybody wants to feel like they're part of something. Everybody wants to feel like they're making a difference, or people respect them or value them or anything like that. So to go to church or to go to football or to go to anything like that kind of brings you closer and into a circle of people is something that you're going to get on board with. And then when someone challenges it, like England
Mob
recently,
mentality.
yeah, exactly. And recently England didn't make it through, and that's a really good example of.
Well, they did make it through. They made it all the way through.
Sure.
They just didn't win it.
Yeah, sure. Well, they came second. Do you know what I mean? But nobody saw that. Everybody just saw they needed someone to vent that frustration on, and that's why, people were getting stabbed. And like I personally was involved in a verbal abuse incident. I was filming their reaction, and then we lost, and then I was verbally abused. So it's like, for filming. So I can see how people become, like you say,
Well, they asked you to film the game and their reactions and stuff.
No. So I was out with the boys, and
all right, okay.
just filming, like when there was goals going in and stuff. Like, I'm into football, but only when it's England, and not really. So
you're not a club football man, no. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. So I'm obsessed with the culture. I think it's amazing. I think it's really cool, but I just can't. I don't know. I just don't get it. But recently, something that I've realized is it's not about the ball. It's not about kicking that little white ball around on the field, or the millions of pounds, or the color of your t-shirt, or any of that. It's all about the feeling that people get when they sit down with their friends and they watch a game, or when their home team win, or there's a game on that day and it's the morning before. That's what they live for. And I think it's the same with things like Christianity and the Bible and stuff. Like, people feel like they're a part of something that's bigger than them, and that's why they lean into it and feel so passionate about it. We haven't got much else. It's
tribalism and collectivism. And going back to what we were saying earlier about, the breakdown I had because I was by myself. It's like, we do need other people. There's an interconnectedness, but I think it can be distorted to benefit a bigger agenda.
You're right.
Well, we're just going to open up here. Like, I think when I moved in here, this place I'm at now, after all the shit I went through, like, I was happy. I'm on my own, but I'm happy. But I think these past couple of months doing the podcast, talking to other people, and like, I realized how much I'm on my own. You know what I mean? Because once this camera goes off and shit, I'm back to being on my fucking own. And I've got my dog and my cat and that, but it's, you know what I mean? I feel it, and I get where you're coming from, Dan. Like, when you're on your own in France and shit, like, and that's different because you're in a different country with no one except maybe a few French friends. But
yeah. And I've done that again, 2 years later, I went back to France on my own, but it was a lot more beneficial because I wasn't in a holiday park. I wasn't working for anyone. I had the money and I was there to heal. And that was a lot more beneficial that time around. That's when the healing began, really. But yeah, it goes back to, it is tribalism. It is collectivism. It gives us agency. It gives us a sense of worth. It's associated with identity in a way. Because it's like, oh, I am an England supporter because I live in England, or I'm from England. And we come together, and I'm not necessarily against it like yourself. I don't follow any particular clubs, but it comes back. My dad told me something about, I think it was during the Roman Empire, whenever there was a possibility of civil revolt, the hierarchies would throw circuses and give the peasants bread. So it's called circuses and bread, but a more modern version of that is football and beer. to appease the masses, to appease the peasants, the proletarians, whatever you want to call them. It is a form of appeasement, a distraction. And I see it as a distraction. I see it as a deception. But when it comes to the international games, I will be a willing participant of that deception, because I do enjoy the thrill of it all. Sitting there watching, I don't know, say England versus Denmark. I'm on the edge of my couch. And the game before that, who was no, I think it was England and Denmark. Wait, what was the quarterfinal?
Germany.
The Ukraine. Was it the Ukraine?
Ukraine.
One?
That was it. Ukraine. So
4 goals in.
So yeah. So in England versus Ukraine, I went to a friend's house in Portland, and he was hosting a little party. And a lot of people I didn't really know, but I knew them from the gym. So it was very nice to see people again after about 18 months of not really seeing them. And the first goal was scored in the first half. And then I left after the first half and went home to watch the rest of my family. But the camaraderie, that the vibe was amazing. People cheering, all sort of talking and speculating. Everybody becomes a fucking football manager all of a sudden. It's like, oh, well, they need to do this and they need to do that. Oh, Southgate needs to get the subs on. But there is that sense, again, it goes back to the senses.
He did in that 4-0 game. He left it to like the fucking 75th minute. So it's stupid.
Yeah. But yeah, it goes back to the senses, the five senses, the ones that we're aware of. But there's that sixth sense, or that other additional sense in amongst those people. What is that we're feeling, that connectedness? Because it's like, if you look at it on a molecular level, the atoms that make us don't ever touch. They never fully touch. There's that little tiny space. So it's like, I'm not even sitting on this chair. I'm floating above it on a, I can never say the word.
Kinetic.
Atomic.
And what are you trying to say?
No, not anatomical. Anatomicals. That's like your arms and your legs, no?
Yeah.
Atom.
Anatity.
On a quantum level, let's just say quantum.
Yeah, cool.
On a quantum level, the particles that make us don't even touch one another. So there's some, it goes back to religion, right? The divine spirit. There's this divine force. Let's just call it element X, that we can't quite identify yet, but we believe in it. That's why people have religion. They believe in this divine spirit, this divine knowledge.
Think physics is a theory still. It's not it's universally adopted, but it's still a theory. It's not proven. Maybe I think was finding the Higgs boson like a big part of physics.
That was a big discovery, because Higgs himself came up with the theory of it, but I don't think it was discovered in his lifetime.
But was that like a
the Large Hadron Collider proved his existence.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say, was that like a big proponent in like proving physics, or was that different thing?
Oh, you know what? It's beyond I would have to look into it again, but I think you're in the right ballpark. But when we go into religion, I myself do not identify as an atheist, but I'm certainly not a Christian. I am a believer in some divine external. I believe in higher dimensions. So I accept that we're in this three-dimensional realm, and the fourth dimension being time. And we are, as a species, as a collective, are moving from past to the future, through the present, as one. That's the one thing that we have in common, is that we're passing through time together in this universe. But beyond that dimension, there's the fifth dimension. And it would be like trying to describe a color you've never seen before. It just is incomprehensible. But I believe that as we advance as a species, if we continue to advance, if we don't, put ourselves into extinction, or if there's an extinction event, if those things don't happen and we continue to advance, there could well be a point where we can explain this divine force. But it's like a magic trick. When someone shows you a magic trick, your mind is instantly blown away. Like, how the fuck did you do that? And if in the rare occasion, the magician was to explain how that trick was done, A plus B plus C equals X, and suddenly the mysticism is gone, because you're seeing it for how it's done. It's a sleight of hand. It's an illusion. It's a very well crafted trick. And it's going to be the same thing with the divine spirit, if you will, or God, whatever you want to call it, the Tao. There'll come a point where if we advance, we'll be able to measure that thing. We'll be able to replicate that thing. And then suddenly that's going to make us, in a way, a divine force. We'll become our own gods, because we would have mastered the universe. because we'll understand all the elements that make up this reality. Does that make sense?
That'll ever happen. So do you think there was a civilization before us more advanced? Before they became extinct?
Quite possibly. It goes into the Fermi
for sure.
paradox. You know, the Fermi paradox talks about, you know, that the possibility of there being life beyond our own Earth. And one of the things it comes up with is what's known as the great filter. The great filter could either be before us or it could be ahead of us. We don't know. Some people theorize that every advanced civilization gets to a certain point where they just implode on itself, whether it be through warfare, whether it be through an extinction event. We just can't get past a certain level of advancement. And people theorize that that could have happened many, many times over in this universe.
Well, we've only got skeletons, haven't we? Like, nobody even knows if dinosaurs were furry.
Yeah, exactly. We don't even know what color they were.
I think I'm not sure if it was my brother. I don't want to put him on blast just in case it wasn't. But someone asked me about dinosaurs and why Jurassic Park use that image of them, and I was like, well, because we have bones, and obviously they're using the bones as a representation of a fucking dinosaur, and that's the closest representation you can get, a big lizard animal, you know? So.
Well, I read that the actual skeletal remains of dinosaurs that we see in museums are not the actual remains themselves.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
They are a representation of the remains, because apparently the bones themselves are too heavy to be put on display.
No, I'm not even that. I strongly believe that, because you got to think their bones are fucking millions of years old. There's no way they can be like in that mint condition, even if they are cleaned up. Have you seen a rotten bone? You can't clean it up, and or maybe you can paint it, but yeah, it's no. And that's why you're not allowed to touch them and shit, because they're probably plastic. That's my guess.
But so we're going in this direction with this whole, you know, advancement of our species. So the whole great filter thing, let's just put that to one side. Let's just assume that there is no great filter and that we are going to survive to be 10,000, 100,000 years from now. And we're going to keep on advancing to the point where transhumanism becomes a thing. For those who don't know what transhumanism is, it's like the merger of of the analog way of living and the digital way. You know what I mean? There's a merger between analog biology.
That's happening, you know,
as we speak. Yeah, it's happening. And it's going to keep on, it's going to keep building on itself as we advance. There's always going to be certain points where the technology hits a glass ceiling, and then we find a new variation, a new version. You know, it's like a games console, you know, the PlayStation 3, let's say. Well, the PlayStation 3 was great when it first came out, and it was HD. It was revolutionary. But then there comes a point where even the games could only do so much. So they need to, and the commercial means of the hardware increases.
This is why I think technology is advancing faster than ever before, because you're going to get competitors are always fighting against each other to have the better hardware, better system. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's always going to get faster, and
it's called Moore's law.
Because you think from the time 360 came out to the Xbox One to when the Xbox X came out, it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. You know
That's only from a commercial point. And don't forget what these home game consoles are. They're a sort of, you're not really getting your money's worth when compared to building your own computer machine.
Oh, of course. I'm just using that as an example of how fast technology is fucking getting at the minute, you know?
But that's what Moore's law is. In fact, I've actually got it in my booklet now. It talks about the progression. I'll even tell you what it is now.
I came prepared.
Isn't it? They double in capacity and half in size every
18 months.
Yeah, something like that. Like SD cards are a really good example of that, because you
MP3 players.
Get there you go. Yeah, all that stuff. You get like a 5-10 terabyte little thing. Like, what?
So the first computers in the 1900s is known what's called electromechanical, which is like a bit of card that's fed into something and it punches holes, very much like binary.
I don't believe in these first ever technology, like, because I remember watching a video about a PC that was found in like from what, I don't know how long ago it was found, but it was found a long time ago. Well, no. It's found under the ocean, or is it a battery? I'm not sure. They found something technological from way back when.
Well, I mean, when you think about the computer language, it's open and close. That's all it is. 1 and 0. One's open, one's closed. But then after that, in 1935, you had what's called relay, and it looks like an accordion. It's like a pump sort of thing.
Mm.
And then we moved on to vacuum tubes after the Second World War. But again, each technology comes to a point where it has a glass ceiling. There's a certain limit that you can reach, and then you have to evolve the means. And then we moved on to transistors, and then we from the 1970s onwards, the technology we use today, integrated circuits. But again, integrated circuits have a limit because it gets closer and closer and closer together. I don't really know the technical terms too much.
You're right.
And then there comes a point where there could be a molecule distance. And it's like, now what do you do? And that's what we're hitting. We're starting to hit that glass ceiling on the integrated circuits now. So we're going to have to go into something like fucking 3-dimensional molecular computing. But when you start getting to that quantum level, it's like the very act of trying to measure something on the quantum realm moves its position. Have you heard of this?
Right.
You know, photons, trying to pass information through a light beam. It's just, we'll get there. And then the progress will continue.
You can put, I was watching this documentary the other week, but you can put videos and shit on DNA now. Literally put a video on DNA, put it on a computer and watch it.
Yeah, that's
I've seen it happen with my own eyes. It's fucking mental.
And that's what I'm saying. There comes a point where we just keep advancing to the point where we become the masters of our own reality, where we can literally change and manipulate our own molecular structure. I mean, you know, we mentioned the vaccine earlier on. The Pfizer vaccine in itself is a mRNA gene therapy. And that's just the beginning of that type of medication. You know, that's going to keep it.
What does that actually mean for us?
It means that we can start to alter is it gene altering? I'm not too well versed on, and I have a vague idea of it, but it's a technology that you know, I've gone blank. But the point I'm trying to make is like, you know, this nanotechnology that interacts with our own biology. That is just the beginning of transhumanism. And there's going to come a point where, you know, we interviewed an author named David Edelman, I think his name was. And he wrote a book called Infoquake. And in this future, everybody has orcas, which is this. It's
actually Lewis and Edelman, but you know, I'm joking.
And he, in this sci-fi book that he wrote, in hundreds of years from now, people have this nanobot technology running through their bloodstream called orcas. And entrepreneurs all around the world can use this, can bring out patches and software for these orcas to change their hair color, to change their eye color, to change anything about themselves. And it's like, we're going to be there at some point.
I'm sure we can do that, some of that stuff now.
Yeah. And there's going to come a point where we are the masters of the universe. We are literally like, there's nothing so when it comes to ethical issues like euthanasia or eugenics, it's just going to be the norm. I mean, there'll come a point where we won't even die, really, because we'll be.
Euthanasia is a question of morality.
Pardon, sorry?
I was going to say, do you think we'll get uploaded?
Yeah. I mean, here's another sci-fi book for you, Altered Carbon.
Yeah, where, true.
You know, we have what people in the story have what's called a stack, which stores all their information. And if they die, their body, which is known as a sleeve in the novel, if that gets destroyed and the stack is intact, then they can transfer that into another sleeve, another body. If the stack gets damaged, that's known as RD, real death. And that's everyone's scared of RD, real death. But if you're rich and if you're wealthy, if you're part of the hierarchy, you can get clones made. You can have your consciousness dialed into you. I think they call it telesending, telelinking, uplinking, a bit like the cloud. But this came out in 2002.
You like grow a body and then program it to be you, basically.
You can have other sleeves of yourself made, like clones, if you're rich. You know, in the novel, they're referred to as messes. Like messes.
Wait, are we talking about Infoquake here still, yeah?
No, this is Altered Carbon we're talking about now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, fuck Infoquake. And fuck David.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, why the fuck are we...
Yeah, fuck that guy. But I do like the orcas. That's the good technology. That was a good premise in his novel, but Altered Carbon did it better with the stacks. And again, that's not out of the question. That could well be a thing hundreds of years from now. Because you think about where we were 50 years ago to where we are now, the Moore's law, the exponential growth in technological advancement.
So what do you think? Do you think that the Neuralink stuff, so like Elon Musk going in and entrepreneurs changing our like stuff immediately, do you think that that's going to come first, or do you think something like what was it we were talking about earlier, where you selectively breed humans essentially?
Oh yeah, and eugenics.
Yeah, so do you think that that's more likely to become a thing at all, or what's your stance?
I think the Neuralink will be what comes first, because I literally caught a snippet of the news a couple of hours ago, and someone had a fucking brain implant in their head, and they were able to. I think the guy had MS, and he was actually able to articulate messages on a text. Like he was able to articulate his thoughts on a display. I didn't stay to watch I never really watched the news, but I just saw like 5 seconds of that, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, Neuralink. That was the first thing that came to my head, was that Elon Musk technology.
This dude on Keyte a couple of weeks ago had hearing aid implants, and he was turning them off and on when he wanted, because they didn't believe him, and he was like, oh, I'll turn it off then. And they were like shouting at him, and he couldn't hear him, and then he turned it off. I was like, yeah, it's clear as day. So that shit's happening.
Yeah. So what is your opinion on the whole idea of this eugenics through our technological advancement? The idea that we could remove disease, illnesses, genetic defects from our civilization. I mean, what is your thoughts?
Ain't that happening though now? Like,
no, I think surely it's an idealistic kind of viewpoint, because for that to happen, you have to disregard a whole section of people. Like, if 10 people are born and only 3 of them meet your criteria, what do you do with the 7?
Exactly. Because
is this what the Nazis were trying to do? Blonde hair, blue eyes and shit?
Yeah, Joseph Goebbels did some crazy things. He was, I think apparently he would get twins, identical twins, and do all sorts of experiments on them, just out of crazy morbid curiosity, just to see what would happen. I'd need to look more into that, because that would be fascinating. But yeah, they're trying to create a superior race, blue eye, blonde hair. But
didn't fucking work. We won, bro.
Yeah, and he himself was
say that, mate.
Yeah, look at that.
Get him.
But would that be a good world to live in, where we can remove all the disabilities, all the cancers, all the horrible things that can happen to people, that can be completely burned out?
It's on the edge, isn't it? It's one of those ones that you can get it right, it's fucked, but then again, it's a bit fucked up still, because you're doing.
Okay, I mean, I think about dogs. If we bred dogs, if we stopped breeding dogs and just let dogs breed, they'd probably be in a much stronger position than they are now.
That is true,
I just think because we bred them to be the breeds that we recognize them to be, and I suppose we then didn't prioritize their health, did we? We prioritized the way they look.
Look at the pug. Yeah, and it's more of an aesthetic thing, wasn't it?
And who likes pug, man? They're fucking ugly, bro. They're just fucking.
Yeah, they have a design flaw, don't they? They have a design flaw. My sister has a pug, and she can't take it for walks because this poor thing will be wheezing, especially in the heat. It just can't handle it. And she even said herself, if she does get another dog after Reggie's gone, she ain't getting a pug.
I don't blame her. Get a fucking purebred, man, Labrador or Border Collie or something. You know what I mean? Ones that are actually smart and intelligent, fucking loyal.
But it does go, when it comes to the whole eugenics, I think what it makes that slippery slope is the whole fact is who gets to be the arbiter of truth? Who gets to be the arbiter of what is a superior human being?
Exactly.
You know, what do we define to be a human? I mean, I know we're sort of obsessed
intelligence. I think it's all about intelligence.
Intelligence, but what about aesthetics? What we define as a perfect being?
I suppose if you locked Hulk Hogan in a room with Stephen Hawking and asked them to fucking fight out to the death, we know who's going to win. But like intelligence, that's why I think Alien fucks Predator up, bro. It's more smart.
I don't think it's as clean cut as that, though, Sean. No, surely you have people that are beneficial to every part. Like, you look at Einstein. If it was based off of aesthetics, he would never have become the person that he was. And if it was only done on intelligence, we wouldn't have Love Island. So,
yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example, right? So my girlfriend,
that's manipulation. Sorry, Dan. That's manipulation of like, what am I looking for? Like TV and stuff. It's all manipulative, isn't it? It's different.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. Like, if we were only going on looks, for example, just as another extreme, yeah. then I feel like we wouldn't get very far. But if
Mm.
only
Yeah, but
went
that's a
intelligence-
prime example, right? Imagine you got half the world, or all the world, and put massive screens in the sky, and put Love Island on. The ones who walk away, they're the smart ones you want fucking building your spaceships and shit, you know?
Is
the
that
ones
your
that stay.
process?
That's
it
my
could be-
process of elimination right there. Eugenics.
then you look at again football. You know, I myself don't really watch football, but I see the deception of the circuses and bread, but I am become a willing participant of that deception. Some mad scientist out there who is smart as fuck might just watch Love Island out of morbid curiosity because he likes the psychology of it, he or she.
I watched Love Island when I was depressed as shit. Now I'm happy. Never watched it. My mum watches it. I'm like, Mum, you're depressed. I know. I can tell. Like,
But
that's
you know,
my.
I just want to go back to this before I forget it. But my girlfriend's mum, she was diagnosed with PPMS, which is some form of multiple sclerosis. But I think it's I can't remember what the PP stands for. I think it's something like progressive. And she was diagnosed with that in her late 30s, and now she's bedridden. She needs to have carers coming in 4 times a day to feed her, to lift her up, to clean her, to bathe her, you name it. The full palliative care, I think it's called. And if you were to use a sort of utilitarian, pragmatic, conservative outlook, you'd be like, what is her purpose? But then if you were to ask my partner, well, she'd say, well, that's my mother. She is capable of love and compassion, and she still can talk a little bit. That's her mother. She loves her. She wants her to live, and her mother's still alive. You know, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because if we were to take that crazy hardcore eugenics route, it'd be like, right, they need to go, gone. But it's like, no, that was a living, breathing soul who provided love for someone else, her daughter, her son, the remaining family. And it is a difficult one, isn't it? Because when it comes to morality, what is that based on? Is it based on religion? Is it based on influences? Is there some sort of innate knowledge within us all that we say, well, what determines if something is good or bad, if something is wrong or just?
I don't think there's any human life that I've come across that we would ever be able to write off. Like, I've met a whole massive variety of people through my 26 years on planet Earth, and I don't think that anybody I've ever met, that's even people that have done me wrong, deserve to not be here anymore. Everyone deserves their shot and their chance to do what they want to do. Like, I know people that are like in a really bad way, physically, mentally, and they're still doing their thing, and they still have so much to give, just because they're, if anything, because they're put back. It goes back to what we talked about earlier with like hitting rock bottom. If you're in a really bad way, then you have the opportunity to spring forward from that and be able to do ultimately a much better thing for society and the wider community, you know?
Yeah.
Potentially.
What about really bad fucking people, like, for example, Chairman Mao? If he was standing in front of you and you had a gun in your hand and you were like, yeah, you got to shoot him or fucking the world's over.
So, okay, so but you think he's inherently evil?
Yeah. Who, Mao?
Yeah, obviously, like the actions.
Oh yeah, he's got the
speak for
highest kill
themselves.
count out of all of them. He has the highest kill count.
Chairman Mao
Yeah.
can get to fuck. I'd murder him in a heartbeat.
And Mussolini.
And Mussolini.
So
Dictators.
that's like the cream of the crop, but then you step it one down from there. Like, do you then kill their associates and then, you know, everyone
See,
else?
this is a fine line.
Where do you draw the line?
man.
Because
It's
it goes to
fucking-
morality as well. What defines good and bad? What defines, is it something that we all unanimously come together to agree upon? But then, like with the narrative that's going on to this day as we speak over the last 18 months, just because a large majority agree on some fact doesn't necessarily mean it's right. Because again, there's always deception. As a species, we're very deceptive, and we're always for the few rather than many. Because
anyone that says "uwu," they can go off a cliff.
Who says that?
It's just like a fucking emo scene thing, innit?
Yeah.
Uwu. Get the fuck. Sorry, anyway.
This is the
I've never
deepest
heard
conversation
that.
we've had. All right, let's take it a little bit more deeper, right? Because the whole existential shit is making my mind boggle. I reach this point in my brain where it's like,
I know, because I'll think of something like, yeah, I'd fucking definitely murder him. Then you will say something, I'll be like, nah, fuck, no.
Well, that's
I
the whole
won't
point.
murder
It's
him.
open-ended discussion. It's not a case of who's right or wrong. It really is exploring our own moral compass.
And that, to be fair, right, I don't think I'd have the balls to kill anyone anyway, like ever.
Well, it's like,
Maybe.
let's say Cherry Mao, let's say you got to kill him, but then what if the only time you could kill him is when he's just a little baby shitting in a nappy and he's smiling and giggling and he's just like the cutest little baby. Like, think of your own nephew.
I don't like.
Now
Change the
imagine
subject,
what I'm
though.
saying.
now I know they're different
He's-
ethnicities, but let's just imagine that this cute little 1-year-old baby shitting in a nappy and playing with toys, and you're there, and it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to kill that baby and prevent the murder of 100 million people, or are you going to take that baby under your wing and show it a
Yeah,
different
but
way?
then it's like the butterfly effect, and something else will happen. Some other
By the very act
baby will
of,
fucking.
it goes back to Time Cop, doesn't it? That Jean-Claude Van Damme film. By the very act of killing, say, Mussolini, Hitler, whatever, right? The very act of killing them could well jeopardize the existence of people that we know today. It could even jeopardize our own existence because of I always say this, for example, when I leave to go to work, this is talk about the butterfly effect. When I leave to go to work, I have a choice every day, whether to go left or right. Now, nothing really significant will happen because I'm going to end up in the same destination. But if it means the difference of 2.5 minutes of me arriving there, well, I could bump into someone else and start having a conversation, and already the change is in motion on where I go about. Now, it might not be that significant that day, but then a week later, a month later, a year later, suddenly it becomes exponential, the changes.
Mhm.
And it could change my life forever.
Mm-hmm.
Just out of interest, which way do you go?
I go right.
Do you?
I used to go left. Now I go right. The reason why I go left is because Rylands Lane has always got cars coming and going, and there's always cars parked either side of the road, so you're always having to give way. Now I go right because it takes me to the main road quicker, and it is quicker by about 3 minutes. But the very act of me going one way could change my life forever. Not that day, not next week, not next month, but a year later. That could be the difference between meeting someone that could change my life forever. You stop and have a conversation with someone. How different would your life be if you didn't have that conversation with that person? Yes, that's the butterfly effect. It's fucking mind-boggling.
For sure. And that's why I don't think you could even say you can cream off all the dictators and just have them gone, because the technologies that we've got through war, the technology, the advancement that we've had to do because of those extreme scenarios, like, I don't believe that Hitler thought he was a bad bloke. There's no way he goes, do you know what, I'm going to choose to be evil. He must have thought whatever he was doing, whatever had happened to him to make him believe that whatever he was doing was correct, is obviously a very awful thing. But I don't know if you can say, oh yeah, Hitler was just doing his best. But
you know how people say, like, oh, the president's got a writer, he's got someone else is behind the scenes. It's not the president, he's just the face. Do you reckon that was Hitler as well? Was there someone bigger behind him? Like, you could say that about everyone. But that was just his ideologies and shit. He didn't like certain religions and outlooks on life, and
he succeeded purely because of the time period that he came to power. Germany was rock bottom. The whole world was rock bottom because of the Great Depression, and Germany was getting fucked. And he comes along. If
Hitler was around today, he'd be cancelled. He
Yeah.
wouldn't be fucking rising up and shit. He'd be
Exactly. He came about.
You know what I mean?
I need to do a bit more research on the history, but from what I understand, he came about during a time when Germany as a country needed lifting up, and he started giving them hope. He gave, again, collectivism, tribalism. He brought people together, that national pride, that patriotism. We are Germany, or Deutschland as you call it. And people come together like, yeah. And it just builds and it builds and it builds. And before you know it, like, this monster's been created. It may even well be that he had good intentions going into it, but then absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not, it always makes you laugh, like, every time you watch a documentary about a well-known dictator, and you always get these historian pricks that will, like, there'll be like a picture of them as a baby, and it said, oh, even as a child, he was very rude at school. He was very dismissive. It's like, oh, fuck off. I'm sure
you see the evil in his eyes.
Yeah, and it's like, I just want to tell those historians to go fuck themselves. It's like, there's no way people can be, look at the Joker, for Christ's sake, man. He just had a bad day. You know what I mean? Yeah, his heart was in the right place before that shit happened to him. You know, he loved his mother. He really cared for his mother. It's
Too
just
much.
people. It was just the, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back, and then he just snapped. You know, how far are between the three of us, how far are we away from, how many bad things need to happen to us before we become a fucking psychopath? We all have our limits. We all have our breaking points.
I think I'm quite level-headed. I think of a few things have happened in my life where it would turn people the other way. But
it's like the film Minority Report. Whenever you first watch that, whenever someone watches that film for the first time, and the whole premise being that we have these three precogs that can determine a murder before it happens, and Tom Cruise and his crew, the pre-crime division, go out to prevent that murder before it even happens, right? The whole determinism versus free will argument. When he is set up for murder that he's going to commit in 48 hours time, when you're watching this film for the first time, you're instantly thinking, well, how? Why is he going to commit this? He himself is saying, I will not commit this murder. And he's on the run to try and clear his name, but they're going after him anyway because of, you know, their laws, their pre-crime laws. And
what's that film called, sorry?
Minority Report. It's a Steven Spielberg movie that came out in 2002.
Do you know what? I've never really got into the film, but now you're explaining it, I'm like, damn, fuck yeah, that sounds really good. Even though I've watched it and full of shit.
I'm not going to give anything away. But your
initial, a very Tom Cruise-y.
Yeah, you can't catch me, gay thoughts. You know, he's on the run big time. But but yeah, I'm not going to give anything away for you because I highly recommend you watch this film. It's a very, very good film. But instantly you're thinking, he's being, according to these precogs, he's going to murder someone in 48 hours. And they're giving him the visions of him doing the murder. And he's on the run saying, I will not commit this murder. But then you find out, well, you know, they're never wrong. Or are they wrong? But you know what I mean? You'll find out for yourself that the very act of him running away from it leads to the chain of events that lead him to that murder.
So then is it their fault?
Determinism versus free will.
No, but isn't like when they're not, he's not supposed to find out that he's not supposed to find out their
there's other elements involved, and I don't want to give away the film.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna watch it.
But I'll give you the sort of premise of the, you know, the first sort of 20 minutes. And oh fuck, where were we going? I mean, this is the fucking best fucking conversation I've had in a long time, man. Like, don't get me wrong, there's some great fucking podcasts we've had where we've laughed and giggled, but in terms of intellectual discussion, you know, sometimes I get easily intimidated when it comes to trying to articulate ideas and beliefs that I don't have a true grip on, because I struggle that I worry that because I put this on YouTube, people will be laughing at me that I can't fully articulate the point I'm trying to make. You know, it's always something that's kind of kept me.
It's not about that either. It's like, if you're interested and know a little bit about it, you can still have an opinion. You don't have to know the ins and fucking outs. You know what I mean?
Hey, if you get trolls in the comments, you got to bring them on as a guest.
Yeah, exactly. And they've got to fucking sit here and try.
All right, so we're going to go down a controversial route now, but it's a discussion that needs to happen. Oh, and before we get to that, you know, we'll talk about going back in time to kill a dictator, right? Well, the problem with that is, and it goes back to what happened last year with the BLM riots, when people were taking down statues. It may well be that because we're in the digital era where it's easier to do your own research on history, the fact that someone like Winston Churchill or whoever, or what was one of the American founding fathers, George Washington, or was it whoever, you start to find out that actually their own history was very, very checkered, and they themselves weren't the people that were these heroes that were being led to believe. But the problem is that the very act of destroying these statues, you risk you completely remove the conversation of what is good and bad. You know, 5 generations down the line, they may never know what tyranny was, because you removed any artifact of that tyranny. And then the only people left with that knowledge are the ones who are themselves the dictators, because they have all the knowledge.
Do you think the statues were put up kind of? Do you think that the checkered past was being made aware of when the statues were being erected, or do you think that we've reflected on that in retrospect? Because it sounds to me like you're saying that the statues shouldn't be taken down as a lesson to future generations to, you know, do or not do something.
I mean, you could say that about Diana's statue. 20 years time, someone could be like, "Yeah, she was an adulterer. Take down that statue."
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Absolutely, I know what you're saying. You know, things change. Like Elvis Presley, for example. I think he was 25 years old and he had a 14-year-old girlfriend. And back then, that wasn't against the law, I don't think. Or even then, it was just kind of shrugged off as, oh, well, whatever. Whereas now, people are quick to, pedophilia is such a big hot
How
topic
the
now.
fuck did Woody
Allen.
Yeah, how do you get? He's still, don't he still?
Yeah, but now now the conversation is happening more and more now, where it's like there's no justifying it. For those who don't know, I think Woody Allen sort of allegedly groomed his stepdaughter, or his adoptive daughter, or something like that, and is now married to this woman.
Oh, whoa.
Not a rumor, it's true.
Oh no, it's true. What happened? Because he was married to beforehand. He was married to Mia Farrow. Was that her name? Yeah, Mia Farrow. He was married to her, and they adopted. I can't remember the woman's name, but they adopted this Asian woman. I believe. I'm pretty sure she's Asian.
Yeah.
And allegedly, he was grooming her from a young age, and then when she was an adult, he married her.
I'm sure he was open about it though. Was
he
he not?
But the morals change as time goes on. What we perceive, what we believe.
Yeah, that's the thing. Going back to the statues, I think that was a product of their time. I think they were actually worshipped then, though. It wasn't like, oh, we'll write this and hopefully in 100 years' time they'll. But
then you look at, like, let's use Winston Churchill for example, right? So apparently, he caused a massive famine in Burma, and and not even just the famine itself, but the way the Burmese were treated. But that was overlooked because of the end result of World War II. And then obviously these people die, and their legacy, what martyrdom, is that the word? They become a martyr.
Yeah, when you die for what you believe in.
Yeah. And Russell Brand, he did a special in 2013, which was really, really good. He spoke about people like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Jesus Christ. He was saying these people themselves were flawed in their lifetime. They were not these heroes, because when you think, what is a hero? It's this sort of hypothetical existence that we fill with our values that we consider to be admirable. And the polar opposite of a hero consists of everything we consider to be non-admirable. That sort of yin and yang, God and the devil. One consists of highest values and one consists of our non-admirable. And sorry,
I was just going to say, I don't think it can't be that clean cut, can it?
No, everybody's
flawed.
Everybody's flawed. And, putting people on the pedestal to say, oh, they can do no wrong. Well, it's like, well, they do everything wrong. But to have that discussion of why they did wrong is important. And as the culture changes, the moral changes. Elvis Presley dating a 14-year-old back in the day wasn't such a big deal. But even someone quite as recently as Paul Walker, he dated a minor when he was in his 30s. And but when he died, everybody was devastated, because this was 2013. This was pre-Me Too movement, and everybody was devastated that he had died. But now, every time you see a Paul Walker post going up on social media, there's so many people saying, but he groomed a minor. You know what I mean? That conversation.
David Bowie now as well. I didn't really know he was a bit of a creep, but every time I see David Bowie stuff now, everyone's just like, yeah, nonsense. And I like David Bowie, but
you know what I mean?
It damages.
But
again, so do you think that we as a society are moving towards people, because they were talking about paedophilia as a sexual preference as opposed to a criminal offense for a while?
I heard that recently as well, yeah.
That's a sketchy one, isn't it? Because you have this thing in America called NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association. It is fucking sick.
Sorry, what?
Yeah. North American Man.
You really do get everything in America, huh?
Right. North American Man-Boy Love Association, NAMBLA. Right. These people advocate for the removal of age of consent, because they see love as love. They see it as it doesn't matter what age they are. Love is love. And it's sick. The whole awareness of pedophilia, whether it be in the Catholic Church, whether it be Hollywood producers, whether it be whatever, the conversation is being had more and more. And the allowance for it is eroded away. And the good thing about that is that people associated with NAMBLA cannot be open about it now. Anyone says, oh, I'm associated with NAMBLA, like, whereas, in the 90s or 2000, they could be like, yeah, we want to get rid of that. Now they can't even show their face, because they'll just get quite rightly castrated.
Yeah, that's fucked.
Yeah.
That should never have been a thing.
But it was. They were advocating for the removal of the age of consent.
But then I don't think. Do you think because it's the same? It seems to me like it's a natural thing that's coming through because there's a lot of it about. Like it's before where it seems to have gone the other way. Like, okay, hear me out on this one. But before, when being gay was like not okay, like way back when.
Before 2013, yep, carry on.
And then and then after that, like it's becoming more and more accepted. We're getting the gay community is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Is that because more people are becoming gay, or is that because more people are then feeling the okay, like it's okay to step into that? Okay, because the society is okay with it.
Yeah, because the culture's changed, people are openly coming out as gay now. Yeah, absolutely.
So you think the same percentage of people were gay at that time but didn't feel the acceptance to come out?
I don't know, because obviously it's not just black and white with heterosexual or homosexual. Obviously there are people out there who are bisexual or gender fluid, whatever they call it. Maybe that's the wrong term there, but you know, the people out there who want to date a woman or they want to date a man, and they kind of change preferences. But now that it's becoming, I mean, you know, homophobia is still a thing. I hate the word homophobia. There's no phobia against gay people. You're just a cunt. But you know what I mean?
So what I'm saying is because there's a species of frog that I can't remember any more detail than this, but there's a species of frog that turn gay when their population gets too large.
I remember Alex Jones doing a bit about this. He was ranting and raving on the info wars about saying
fucking frogs gay.
Yeah, saying that the chemical waste that was being put into this river was turning the frogs gay. But it's so interesting that you mentioned that. Actually, they can change their sexuality. I could never picture a bunch of sodomizing frogs. That'd be something else. What are you doing, Gary? I'm gay now. There's too many of us.
But like, could you, if the other side of that argument, when I said to you earlier, do you think it was the same percentage? Because there's a lot of gay people in the world. That's not a problem or anything, but they're not going to reproduce. Like, there's some people that like, no, absolute line in the sand. If I'm going to have a kid, I'm going to adopt. That's actually a positive thing for society.
Oh no,
yeah, I don't disagree with that. Like, I've always been open to, like, you know what I mean? I'm open to everyone can choose what they want to fucking be or do. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And sometimes they say it's not a choice, and if it's not a choice, and you're always like that, fair enough. Like, it doesn't bother me whatsoever. What bothers me is people being cunts.
Yeah, it falls into the whole transhumanism thing again, especially when it comes to people who identify as gender fluid or transgender. You know, the pronouns are being introduced now, but 20 years from now, or in our lifetime, we are going to see the actual technological possibility of changing our physical cells, our biological cells, molecule by molecule, where it's not just a case of gender reassignment surgery. It's like you can literally, like a seahorse, maybe a seahorse is a bad example because they have both, you know what I mean? You can literally be a woman. You can literally, on an aesthetic level, on a physiological level, you can just like, you know, that technology, the Orca technology in the Infoquake novel, you can literally change everything about you, and that's going to be a thing. So again, it's just that the pronouns are being introduced a little bit too early because it doesn't quite reflect with the culture, in the sense that technologically we're not there yet. We can have gender assignment surgery, but and you can also have the hormone replacement surgery, and you can have all these things to change and become what you wish to be on a biological level. But the technology will advance to a point where you molecule by molecule.
Think so? Because just taking it back to religion really quickly, one of the other reasons, apart from the community side of religion, I'm reading 12 Rules of Life by Jordan Peterson, so heavily influenced by the Bible, and I think one of the things he says is that hang on, I forgot what I was going to say.
It's a dense book though. I've read it. It's very good.
Yeah, I'm properly slogging through it at the moment. It is very, very dense. But a lot of what he touches on with regards to the Bible is the predictability in other people's behavior. So like if I'm part of the church and I've got all of my friends, they're all part of the church, and we all go to church, and we all turn up on the Sunday, and we all have a conversation, and none of us really swear, and none of us really do that, and none of us do that, but we all do this, and we all abide by this, rules that were written down at X amount ago. That's great. I think that's brilliant, because then I know that you're not going to kill me, you know that I'm not going to kill you, and everything in between. Like, I know that you're going to be a good person, because otherwise we're both, like, you're going to hell. So if you have the ability to change kind of every little thing about you, how do you then predict other people's like, if I wake up, decide to be a woman and go and cause havoc as a woman, and then go home and switch out to be a man and come and be a totally different person, how are we going to recognize? Are you saying that woman status or that man status is going to physically change my disguise? There's got to be some regulation on that, no?
I don't know, because when it comes to, your soul, when you strip everything away, when you strip away the identity, when you strip away your appearances and your net worth, your career prospects, when you take all of that away, what are you left with? What is truly your identity? What makes you who you are? When you take it all away, your preferences, your clothes, what you identify as, take all of that away, what are you left with?
How does anyone go to hell? Doesn't God always forgive?
Yeah.
New Testament, God always forgives. Old Testament, God is...
Unless you're associated with NAMBLA, then you go to hell.
Yeah.
NAMBLA or Mao.
Yeah.
On like the same level.
You know what? I like to consider myself as being tolerable and liberal and open-minded, but I do turn fucking medieval when it comes to that particular subject. Everyone's got everyone's got their psychopath point. Like I said, what pushes us to be Tom Cruise in Minority Report to do that murder? For me, it'd be anyone associated with NAMBLA.
Mine would be when someone's like in desperation and they're still getting like bullying. I hate bullying. I hate that shit. Even though I have a laugh myself and maybe done questionable things, but I never would class myself as a bully. I hate that shit. Like a weaker person than a bigger person. Like, why? I hate that shit.
That in itself could be argued that is that a necessary element of our progression as a species, because
I seen this argument the other day on Facebook or something. They were arguing about we're always going to need bullies and all this shit. It's like, I don't know.
Like, we've all been bullied in our lifetime at some point. We've been intimidated by someone we felt had not necessarily authority over us, but they had some form of dominance over us, whether it be as a child or as an adult. And looking back on those events with an open mind, with a clear mindedness, I can look back on those events and think, well, that I associate that with a value that I consider to be non-admirable. So therefore I can choose to continue my life and make decisions based on not being that particular individual or having those morals or having those actions. I'll do the exact opposite. Sometimes you have to experience tyranny personally to think, no, I will not do that. It's the same with the, parents. You could have a parent that beat you or verbally abused you or sexually abused you, whatever it may be, whatever kind of abuse it is. And that gives you the decision then as you come of age and you grow up to think, I will have children of my own and not do these things. And then you put your morals onto that child, your values onto that child, that offspring, so that they can continue on the lineage of strong values, or what we perceive to be objectively strong values.
So how does that cycle loop round then? Because in theory, that means that I suppose the choice is still yours.
Because,
so you either go left or right, I suppose. Yeah.
I seen that, this is going back to, sexual abuse of minors, but they say that most people who are pedophiles were themselves victims of sexual abuse. And so there comes a point, I will not continue this trend. Or is this some form of disease that goes into you that causes you to become this monster?
I'd see that as a put off though, personally. Like, you'd fight to not want to have put anyone through that if you've experienced it.
Yeah.
So why would it drive you to doing the thing that made you fucked up in the first place? I don't know.
Well,
Like, so,
a better example is people who are bullies were themselves bullied. Because, you know, I use this example, I use this analogy, right? So let's imagine we all have this life force within us, right? Think of it as like a pilot light. And anytime you bully and intimidate someone, you will take them from their pilot light to feed your own. All right. But then that pilot light within you needs to keep perpetuating itself. So you have to keep taking it from others. But when you are selfless and give a little bit of your pilot light to someone else who needs it to lift them up, yours will grow stronger, like giving blood.
Yeah.
You know, your body will replace that blood that you've donated over time. It will replace itself. It will replenish itself.
we did that a lot in school. We used to always fucking get innocent, not innocent.
You know, I have myself in my life been a bully, not to the same extent that I myself was bullied, but there have been times when I was a young teenager where I was being a jerk to someone else who didn't have the confidence to stand up to me, and I was being a jerk. And I remember the feeling it gave me, this feeling of power. This feels good. Luckily, I was able to identify that, and then I stopped doing it. You know, but there are moments in life where you want to get angry at someone, even if you're in the right. Like yourself said, Sean, if you to witness someone being a bully and you're able to defend that person, you think to yourself, oh my God, I'm being a bully myself, because I'm someone who's intimidating someone else. My response is to intimidate them, you know?
Mm.
Yeah, but then you're on their level.
Exactly.
It's different. It's different because you're not bullying them. They're trying to be a bully. So you stand up to them. They've got to put that energy into you, and you're not going to stand down. It depends who you are, but
there was this tactic I used, and my mum was really good with this. You know, anytime I wanted to, if I was having a bad day or I was in a bad mood and I wanted to give shit to someone that I thought was doing a discourteous thing or being an arsehole, I would always say to myself, all right, before you do that, imagine they're 6'5" and built like a brick shithouse. Treat them like they're that. You know what I mean? Because it's easy for, you know, someone who's smaller than you, that's being a jerk. It's easy for you to be in their face. So every time before I do that, I always think, all right, they're 6'5" and twice as big as me in mass.
Nah, mate, straight slap. Insta slap. You can't allow that shit to happen.
Obviously, if you're defending someone in the moment, I get that. You've got to intervene
and
protect the person. But if someone's just being a dick, like, I'm trying to think of an example that doesn't make me look like
I
an arsehole.
have a slight edge on this. I just want to interject. If you're hurt by the world, you then take that pain and try and cause it to get back at the world.
It's very easy to do that, isn't it? It's so if you don't keep on top of it, if you don't keep in check with yourself, it's so easy to become the dictator, to impose tyranny that was imposed on you. It's so much easier.
Absolutely.
To rather take a step
I don't know,
back.
have you found this with regards to? Sorry to interrupt you, Dan, but with regards to what you talked about earlier with your relationship that didn't end that well. I'm guessing in some way you were quite hurt by that experience. Have you found that that's followed you?
Not anymore, because it was a very long period. We're talking a good 3 years of healing and understanding. And the main catalyst of that pain for my ego was that I was not good enough for her, but this other person that she moved on with was better. And that was very difficult.
Jealousy thing.
It was jealousy and anger and resentment and bitterness, because it's like, why was I not good enough? Right. But then when it came to the point of acceptance, it wasn't so much that I wasn't good enough, it's that it was a dysfunctional relationship and that I was still growing. I had lots to figure out still. There was a lot of growing to happen. And when I forgave myself, I moved on. That was the day I woke up. I don't want to sound crazy, but I was in Bordeaux and I had a crazy ass dream where I met up with her and we reconciled our differences. And I woke up and I'd moved on just like that.
Wow.
After 3 years. It wasn't like 3 years of constant pain. It was like there was highs and lows. So every time there was a low point, I'd always, because I was single for starters as well, and no other relationship would fulfill that hole that had been left. But once I learned to love myself, then I could move on.
Were you in and out of other relationships, or was it just a case of
Yeah, I was dating. I was in and out of dating, you know, relationships that didn't quite get past that first stage, what I call the 4 stages of interaction. It's more associated with group dynamic, but it's what's called, you probably learn this in any sort of office-based job. They teach this, they even teach this at college. Forming, storming, norming, performing. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
What's this one?
Forming, storming, norming, performing. I'll break it down for you, right? So
Storm and Norman.
storming, norming. Let's just call it storming, norming.
What's Storm and Norman again? What's that?
Right, I'll explain it to you, right? So really, like, I'm not a big fan of Big Brother, but I would watch Big Brother the first few episodes purely to see this thing unfold before my very eyes. So stage 1 of the group interaction, and it can be applied to individuals, but it's more commonly associated with group dynamics. The first stage is forming. So a group comes together, they're strangers, and they put on a face, they put on a mask, a sort of restrained version of their true personality. It's a very narrow version of who they truly are. And it's usually associated with what we consider to be our highest values, whether it be charismatic, engaging, accommodating. We try to be all these things. So you watch Big Brother, for example, and you'll see that happen. Everybody's getting drunk, they're buzzing because they're on the show and they're in this house now, and woo, you know, everybody outside's cheering. Oh, hi, hello, I'm Dan. How are you? What's your name? Oh, yeah, no, I work as a PT. You know what I mean? That's the first stage. That's the forming, the coming together of the dynamic. But then what happens? Well, the booze, the buzzing, the pendulum swings back the other way. So a couple of days later, and you go into stage 2, which is storming. So people start nitpicking at each other now. Oh, you didn't clean the fucking dishes. Oh, why are you being such a dick? You know what I mean? Suddenly that facade is gone now, and you're just picking at each other's flaws now. And that, which in itself is conflict. But then stage 3 comes along, which is the reconciliation, the norming. And you'll again see it on Big Brother. Maybe it'll be about a week and a half into the show, where they get drunk again and they start crying. He goes, oh, I love you. And they start opening up a little bit more about who they are, and they reconcile their differences. And then after that comes the last stage, which is performing, where they come together. But again, it's a cyclical thing. It doesn't just stay at performing. It relapses back into storming. And then conflict and resolution. It's a cyclical. Cool. And it can be applied in a relationship to some degree, where you meet someone on a first date or the first couple of dates, so the honeymoon period, which would be the forming, the first stage forming. And it's, again, you're giving off all your best values, but that can't be maintained forever, because that's not who you truly are. It's an idealistic version of who you are. And then once you get to that storming phase, that's going to be make or break of whether or not you're going to carry on a relationship. My girlfriend, for example, you know, within about 6 weeks, we had the honeymoon period came to an end, and we had our first, I wouldn't say first argument, but our first legit disagreement. And that comes a point on, are we going to continue this relationship, or do we go our separate ways? And we made that choice between ourselves to continue. So with those previous relationships I was mentioning, we never got past that storming phase.
Yeah.
That was a bit convoluted. I apologize. But
so what you're trying to say is you're a massive fan of Big Brother.
Well, it hasn't been on for many years, but there were times I was dipping in and out of it. I remember the one I watched all the way through was when Jedward were on and Tara Reid.
That doesn't count as celebrity Big Brother. Fucking count.
I got no time for the regular Big Brother. I don't want to fucking watch strangers. Ironically, people are watching us. We're strangers.
I fucking love Big Brother, man. I miss it.
No,
I'm not gonna lie.
But I do like it for those reasons, because you get to see those 4 stages unfold before your very eyes. You know, that initial buzz.
Thanks for showing me that. I really, that's really cool. there's some stuff I just found, and I'm gonna look at that in a bit. It's really cool.
But yeah,
Celebrity Brother 2015. Check out. I'm joking. Piss off, dog.
Yeah, so I forgave myself. I can't really remember what you asked me, but you know, once I forgave myself.
Said, did it follow you? The pain? Did you carry it into those dating scenarios and find that it? You know, you were assuming that they were going to be like the same or anything like that?
Yes and no. So it wasn't necessarily I was looking for that person. I was quite swift, even though despite my pain that I was carrying, I was very self-aware.
My phone's dying, boys. Just a heads up.
All right, no worries. We'll wrap this up soon. But I was very self-aware of certain things. I was trying to fill the hole with companionship, but for all the wrong reasons, you know?
Yeah. I was doing the same when I had my first relationship, proper one.
Yeah.
I was doing the exact same afterwards.
Yeah. Once, you can't love another until you learn how to love yourself. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, that is it.
Once you can be content in yourself, again, if you can't be one without it, you will never be one with it. I finally met Rachel when I was going through a phase where I actually learned to be okay in my own company, like literally be okay with it. I was happy, and she just showed up in my life.
But you one of those people that can be like, yeah, she's the one. Like,
I looked at her, yeah. I glanced at her, and instantly I was like, she's beautiful. I want to be, I don't want to sound soppy, but I literally said to myself, I want to be the reason that she smiles every day.
Oh,
so
mate.
every day I make her smile, man. But yeah, it is a case of, even if I'm not present with her, I'll tag her.
I get what you mean though, because I've always fancied this girl for ages, and straight away when I looked at her, I was like, yeah, she's got to be the one. And I've never ever looked at another girl, but I'm not like.
Here's the thing.
I just have a crush, it's just a crush to me in my eyes.
A lot of these quasi relationships would fail because I had a self-esteem issue in myself. I didn't believe in my ability to be whoever it was I needed to be, because I could not step up to be the man that this ex-girlfriend wanted me to be. So that did fuck with my head for a little bit. But when it came to Rachel, it was no longer a question of, oh, am I good enough? It's like, I will be good enough for her. I'll put everything on the table. I'll do everything I can to the best of my ability. And, it's not always perfect, but.
So in a way, it was like a new emotion where you were like,
yes,
I actually love this girl. Yeah.
I will be. Yes, I will.
It sounds like you changed what some people would say your vibration.
Yeah, the vibration changed because I had that time to myself to think, oh, I have these problems. I need that introspective moment. And I did a lot of introspective moments throughout the years of living in Bordeaux or coming back to Weymouth, and all these dreams and ambitions and checking it. And I'm still growing, I'm still moving. It's like, who am I? What is my identity? When you take away everything, what am I left with? And it's love. It's nothing but love and compassion.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the divine spirit.
Yeah. The divine spirit. Yeah. Anyway, this has been a really good fucking podcast, mate.
Yeah, no, I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you very much for having me on.
And it's new territory for us as well, because we've never really done this type of podcast where it's been a really deep, philosophical, open conversation. We've had deep moments in our previous podcast, but we've never really gone this deep, where we're exploring ideas that we can't fully articulate because we've never really articulated them to this extent.